it's time to start talking about this. Why adult friendship just seems so different.
Why does it still exist, this mean girl thing in our 30s and 40s?
So it just never magically disappears. Now they just have like nicer shoes and handbags.
You can never really relax among other women as a woman. They're plotting something, there's gossip.
This looks like manipulation. They always play the victim, withhold love or support.
Oh my God, I'm just sitting here reevaluating all the friendships that I have.
It's almost like you're too much of a good friend. You're over functioning in the friendship.
Do you have any tips for people that are trying to find those ride or dies?
Okay.
Okay, you guys, today's episode is really interesting to me because it is a topic that I haven't really dived into until I turned 30, honestly. And that is the topic of friendships. I know that now we are very aware how important our female friendships are, especially for women. I literally think there's science that tells you that you live longer when you have these relationships in your life. But I also took time when I turned 30 to understand what is it that I look for in my friendships. How do I show up as a friend? And a lot of that happened when we decided to move to Miami. Obviously, that kind of change of environment, coming into a new city, gave me an opportunity to reevaluate a lot of things. And I just remember the first promise I gave myself before we moved was that I'm going to make an effort to build those connections in my life. I'm going to prioritize them because up until then I didn't. I prioritized my family, I prioritized my career, and all of that is understandable. There are different seasons in life for everything. But I definitely reached that point when I turned 30 where I looked around and I'm like, I am not doing enough. I had friends in my life that poured a lot into me and I didn't pour back, and also people that were around me that were just there because I was too lazy to evaluate if that's even beneficial for me. So, a lot of new beginnings and a lot of new endings that happened at that time. And I realized that there is a big struggle in today's time and age, especially for women that are past their 20s, to make friends and to keep them and to know when to stay around and when to cut someone off. And when you do cut someone off, how to do it in a way where it doesn't disrupt your life. Because sometimes in these friendships, there are people around us that you can get away from. If it's in your workplace, if it's in your family life, relatives, and you have to learn how to assert yourself. You have to learn how to be the type of person that they respect, but they don't have to be friends with. Anyways, there's a lot to learn here. And for that reason, I wanted to have Christie Ferrari here because she has been such an amazing source of inspiration and expertise when it comes to psychology. Her main topic is friendships. Her main topic is mean girl energy, how to navigate a lot of these things, and even the subtleties of a friendship that no longer is there is something we don't talk enough about. She went to school at Johns Hopkins to learn clinical psychology, so she comes with receipts. But I really fell in love with her and her content because she does such an amazing job merging the world of fashion and interactions with the psychology of friendships and female connections. So I am excited for you to listen to this episode. I know I left with a lot of information that I'm going to implement. So without further ado, let's dive into friendships. I'm happy we get to do this because I did bombard you with a lot of questions.
Yeah, I was like...
when we were at this event. And just to give a little bit of background, I mean, we've known each other for a couple of years now. I feel like since I moved to Miami, I just kind of like, oh, here's another like fellow fashion, girly out in the wild. We met at different events. And when I started looking at your content, I was like, oh, those events are a little research ground for her. Because you have obviously a background in psychology and specifically in friendships. So when I started looking at the way you merge your expertise, but also you out there in the world, like, interacting with people, I thought it was so fascinating. And I personally am a huge fan of all things friendships because it's one topic that I don't think I ever really sat with or like considered too much, especially in my 20s. I feel like it hit me in my 30s. So I am really curious to hear a little bit of your research out there in the world, because you're not just an expert, you're a practitioner. There's theory and there's practice. So tell me a little bit about how did you even get to a point where your whole focus is like friendships?
Yeah, of course. So, well, thanks for having me.
That was a lot. That was a long
Yeah, a few
intro.
questions.
Yes, there's a lot going on, but take your time.
Yeah, no, it's fun. I mean, I started doing this as a hobby and a creative outlet while I was practicing full time. And had moved from Miami to Baltimore, and life was so different when I was at Hopkins. It was very academic, like you couldn't really wear color. You had to like tone down your personality a bit. So I took to fashion and Instagram to just like have a fun outlet from like a very serious job. And when I finished doing my residency at Hopkins, I moved to New York with my husband, and life kind of just fell into this. And when I was in New York, like I was doing this full time, I took a sabbatical from psychology and practicing actually for a few years. And then I noticed that I had been missing more depth in my life. And that's where I came into this. It was also a lot of like lived experiences. So I had been practicing a lot, but also like from attending all of these really amazing events and dealing with friendships, it was like, wow, things are, different. So that's when I said, it's time to start talking about this to help other people. And I knew like I wanted to help others. And I found like this was resonating with a lot of people from dealing with like mean girls and how to make friends in adulthood. So that's where it kind of like started. And then you were asking about why adults friendship just seems so different than like what it was when we were in our like 20s. And really like the main thing is that back then we had all these like built-in opportunities to make friends. Like we were in college, we had like our first jobs, we were going out with them constantly. And now we have kids, we have like our husband or our partner, we have our job, and it's just so hard juggling that in and of itself. And then now you're adding in friendships. There's just so little time. So like that's really like part of the big reason. But we're wired to really focus on what's in front of us. So if we're not spending time with our friends, it's very easy for a strong friendship to actually kind of fade, even if there's no conflict. It's kind of like out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
And then we also have this like, preference for depth and no longer want like surface level conversation.
Right.
So we really need to like actually be intentional when we were in our 20s. We didn't need to have to work for it.
And
we
the
didn't have to be
expectations
intentional.
are so much higher out of these relationships that you're putting the little time that you have anyways. Aside from obviously the external factors of all these things, is there anything that's going on within us? Like, because I feel as I get older, I have less capacity to deal with a lot of nonsense. Like, I personally let go of probably 3 friendships last year, where at some point I was like, this is just not worth my energy. There's nothing I can do, even if there's a lot here, but not enough, So it's also like my inner capacity of just being really true to myself, where it's not worth it. Are there any other things that we have internally going on that also kind of makes us, whether either work for that friendship or just kind of close down?
Yeah, of course. So like we have to be intentional with our friendship. So if we're not being real or vulnerable in our friendship and it's just staying surface level, it's hard for us to want to be friends with that person. And if we're not checking in on them. So if they're also not checking in on with you. So the fact that you said like 3 friendships you let go, it probably sounded like they weren't filling your cup. So like one thing I always ask people or my clients or whatnot are, how do you feel after you've spent time with this friend?
Yeah.
Do you feel like your cup is full, like you're energized, supportive, like, wow, like that was like, great and energized? Or do you feel like, wow, I felt dismissed by whatever they were saying because they were just changing the subject anytime I was talking about myself or what was going on in my life, or just drained because it wasn't just like, okay, they're going through something hard, like a tough chapter in their life, because it's normal for friendships to kind of ebb and flow. But it's like, do they have this history of pattern of like being constantly negative that it's just draining? And they're just like taking from you, almost like you are doing all this emotional labor and it's just not reciprocal. And when you notice that imbalance, it's kind of hard to like unsee that.
You mentioned in your content growth flags
Uh-huh.
and red flags. Explain to me the
Yeah.
concept.
So like red flags are like clear signs that a friendship is not healthy. So like this looks like manipulation. So like they always play the victim. They like withhold love or support if you don't agree or comply with like whatever they want. It's also like disrespect. So like they're always giving you like backhanded compliments. It's like it sounds like they're complimenting you, but there's like keywords or their tone is like you're kind of left second guessing, like, huh, was that nice? Was that not nice? It's really like disrespect, manipulation, and then also like if it's one-sided, you're carrying the emotional labor in the friendship, like you're doing everything and they're not meeting you there. Whereas growth flags are about repairable challenges. That's all about like misunderstandings. You have a difference in communication style or just like mismatched seasons, like someone's extra busy than you
Yeah.
are because of like work or they just had a baby and it's hard for them to be emotionally available to you. But like those are repairable. Those are things that you can grow from and have conversations with. Whereas the other one, it's kind of hard to. I always like to tell everyone never just cut someone off. Always have at least one conversation about it before just like letting it go because sometimes people just truly lack awareness about it. And it's, you owe it to yourself. You spent time with this person forever, how long, you guys did have fun. So have that conversation. But only if you also can tell that they're curious. Like, do they naturally are curious or do they always
Right, like
shut
they're
down
open for this conversation.
or do
at
they
all.
like are super defensive?
Oh my God, I'm just sitting here reevaluating all the
I'm like bringing up so much.
all the friendships that I have. No, actually, you know what? I don't know about you, but I feel like I pride myself, although I've never really dived into the psychology of friendships and what kind of friend I am and all those things. But the one thing I do have going for me, if I can say so myself, is the self awareness. I caught myself at different times in my life having certain expectations that were not realistic from a friend. Just like we talk about it within relationships,
Sure.
right? Where we have our partners and we just kind of assume this person has to be all these things and have to understand me at all times. And it's one thing to realize that in your relationship with your partner, but it's a little harder to realize it when it's someone like your best friend that you've gone through so many things together. So there were a lot of moments where I just kind of had to pull myself back being like, this is not about you. Like, this is now your opportunity as a friend to just hold space and not demand any more of that person. How do you go about that? Just like understanding the kind of friend you are before pointing fingers into what else is happening outside.
I think this is a great topic and question. Like sometimes it's just hard to be self-aware. So like I think that's great. When you're aware of like how you're showing up as a friend, then that means you are going to be able to be a better friend. When you lack total awareness about like how you're showing up, it makes it harder for you to see like if you're doing anything that could be making or impacting the other person. You also mentioned about your partner versus a friendship. People talk more about like dating and marriage as opposed to friendships. It's just there's no class. We aren't taught when we're growing up. Like this is, what you're supposed to do if you get into a conflict or, how to handle jealousy or how to handle insecurity. No one really talks about these things. And so these people like carry it inside. And if they lack the awareness, it makes it that much harder to talk about it. But speaking of like how you're showing up, I think it's important to ask the other person. Like that's why also these conversations.
Yeah.
Like, are you checking in on this person? Are you also like meeting that other person halfway? When they ask you questions, are you sitting with them like 50-50 or are you then deflecting and bringing everything back to yourself? Like there's so many questions. Awareness is really hard, but those are like just like a few things that you can be checking in with yourself of like, am I being a good friend?
So do you ever stop yourself and ask like 1 to 2 questions just to kind of bring back to base level to understand, the situation as it is rather than what you maybe made up in your mind? Do you have any kind of triggers for people to just ask yourself this to take you back?
Well, what happened?
Yeah.
I always like to say there's always like 3 viewpoints to a scenario. So it's like, what's your side? What is their side? And what is the neutral side? because it's like really hard. You can always see everything through your own filter, but it's important to be like, how could they be feeling this way? If I'm in this scenario, is there anything I could have done to have made them feel upset, or do they feel good in our friendship? So like I always go
Mm-hmm.
back to ask myself that if something happens is like, how could you have played a role in whatever's going on? And if that
Mm-hmm.
person's like, well, I didn't do anything, well, then that means they might also lack awareness, because there's always,
That's a red flag.
yeah, there's two
Because
people.
no one is ever fully innocent, truly.
Never, never, never. Because you can accidentally reinforce something. You
Yeah.
can stand by and just let it happen and ignore it. But those are
Mm-hmm.
still like participation in the problem.
This episode is sponsored by Clearstem. So you guys, I've been using Clearstem for about a year now and always loved how the products keep my skin clear and glowing. They just actually launched a whole new look with their rebrand, and I love the new aesthetic and how it looks on my vanity. I care about these things. I love and trust the products. I actually had the founders on an episode, and just the information that I got about the brand and the ingredients and the process and integrity of it has been amazing. If you don't know my obsession with these two products, let me break it down to you. I love the Hydra Glow Stem Cell Moisturizer. It gives you softer, plumper, and healthier skin. And then, of course, I have the Gentle Clean, which is a vitamin-infused calming wash. I have very sensitive skin. So this one is a great one because it's non-drying and doesn't strip the skin barrier. Clearstem is formulated with no pore clogging ingredients ever. That's their clear pore promise, because clear skin changes everything. Discover the Clearstem difference and experience clear, healthy skin for life. Go to clearstem.com/Valeria and use code Valeria at checkout for 15% off your first order. That's CLEARSTEM.com/Valeria, and the code is Valeria for 15% off. This episode is sponsored by Vuori. Vuori provides a new perspective for athletic and performance clothing. Everything is designed to work out in, but doesn't look or feel like it. I've been a fan of Vuori since I discovered their athletic wear, because that was my introduction to the brand. But then I also learned about their Dream Knit collection, and specifically the performance jogger. Oh my God. You know, there are days where I work out and I obviously reach for my leggings and my cute sets that they have, but specifically for days when I'm just running around doing errands or lounging at home or traveling, this is what I go for. They are mid-rise, has elastic waistband, and they just looked really put together without the effort. You know what I mean? The Dream Knit fabrication makes them so soft and lightweight, and the fit is relaxed, so comfort is winning yet again. Vuori is incredibly versatile and comfortable, so it's perfect for whatever your day brings. For our listeners, they're offering 20% off your first purchase. Get yourself some of the most comfortable and versatile clothing on the planet at vuori.com/notalone. That's VUORI.com/notalone. Exclusions apply. Visit the website for full terms and conditions. What made you so curious specifically about friendship? Was that like at a certain age that you realized that this is such an important topic for you as a woman, as a mother, whatever that was?
You know, I had a lot of lived experiences as well. So that's what made me like want to come up. I was dealing with a lot of mean girls first. And so that kind of like, you know what? I always approach the topic, even with my clients, of like, be the bigger person, ignore them, don't give them the reaction. The problem with that is only good advice if you never have to see that person again. So like if you're in the
Right.
grocery store, sure, ignore them. Like who cares? You're never going to see them again. However, if this is like your sister-in-law, not to say I have a problem with my sister-in-law.
We love the sister-in-law.
If this is like a coworker or colleague or like someone like, you know, someone in your friendship group, you have to be able to assert yourself. And like there's a continuum. You can be passive aggressive, you can be totally passive, you could be aggressive, and we want to fall somewhere in the middle of being assertive, because assertive means that you are able to say what you need, but you're still respecting the other person. Being aggressive is like you are only taking care of your own needs, but you're disrespecting the other person.
Yeah.
Whereas passive means you are totally ignoring your own needs to make the other person comfortable. So like short, neutral, assertive responses and not giving that other person a response is like the best way to deal with Mean Girls, but like that was
Don't you feel like it piles up?
well, it does, but once you learn that you have a way forward with these assertive responses, you regain your power. And that's usually what happens. Mean girls want power, they want control. So when you take back your control, you take them off of like that whole playing field. You're no longer at the disadvantage.
Did you have an experience where the mean girl kind of game went away because there was no reaction from you?
So definitely with one of them. So like the other two, I don't see that much. So it's not really, but it's more like I usually see them like at work events. So it's like a matter of like, it's not really a thing.
Right.
So, but it's one of them, it did stop because it was like I was no longer giving them.
You weren't playing ball.
Yeah. Once I stood up to the person, it was like, okay. So
I want to take it now to this new term that I've never heard before. Yeah. I got that from you, the fringe friend experience. So what does that mean to be a fringe friend?
Okay. So a fringe friend is someone that's in a friendship group, but they're like on the outskirts of their group. They're not emotionally prioritized. They don't feel seen and heard. So it looks like you know everyone's story in the group, but no one in the group is actually asking you, what's your story? Okay. It looks like you're the glue, the social glue, and you are able to connect and bring friendships together, and you expect to have a group of friends. But then what ends up happening is you then get iced out because you're no longer the favorite friend. You like, they become
you
like,
made a connection and now
they made the new pair, and then you kind of like dwindle. It looks like reaching out to your friends to make plans, and they always say they're too busy, or it looks like they cancel or flake like last minute, or it looks like saying that you're always welcome, but you're not really invited because they don't actually invite you somewhere. So the person doesn't feel like seen or heard in that friendship group. You're kind of like orbiting. And this usually happens because of a few different habits. So it's almost like you're too much of a good friend. And you're over functioning in the friendship because you're carrying this imbalance.
Yeah.
You're the listener. So you are like the go-to friend that everyone goes to for advice. But then when it's your turn, it's like, I gotta go. Or it's like they change the subject. Or it's like you overgive and you like show your love through like support or love and being helpful and doing things for that person. But it's just not reciprocal. You're like carrying it. Or you're like the easy friend. You go along with the flow. You never state your preferences. Everyone's like, oh, where should we go for dinner or whatever? And you're like, oh, whatever you want. Or you never rock the boat. You're like totally adverse to conflict. So you're like, I'm not going to say anything because you want to be included. But what ends up happening is they don't get to really know the real you because you are almost like performing. You're trying to be too much of what they want. And when that happens, you're doing so much. Your emotional labor is like you're over functioning. And then what ends up happening is the other person under functions because you've never really like shown them how to be a friend to you.
I have to tell you, it also, because I had a friend like that before, and it was the weirdest experience because I've recognized that this is a really good person, but for some reason, I also didn't want to be around them because for me, when a person doesn't prioritize themselves and doesn't stand up for themselves, it's just, I don't know.
Like a turnoff.
It's a turnoff, yeah. And it was a hard one to let go of because I felt really guilty, you know, because again, it was a great friend. But it's like I wanted her to be great with herself.
Exactly.
If you recognize that within your friend group, how do you even bring that up?
How do you bring it up and tell your friend that they're a friend? Yeah.
You're a fringe friend. We need to sit down. This is an intervention.
You don't even necessarily need to like confront them. It's more about like helping them like, you know, well, what do you want? And like putting the question back onto the other person. So if they're like over giving, you know, like, oh, that's so sweet of you, but
stop.
You know, I mean, on the flip side, the person needs to stop over giving. They need to stop shrinking. They need to stop people pleasing, and they need to stop over functioning in the friendship. It needs to be mutual because like you said, the person kind of, they don't respect them. They like, you lose respect for the friendship. You want them to be their own, just exactly like you said. But like to confront them, like, you know, I want you to start prioritizing you. It's not what I want. It's not what I want. What do you want?
I think that part of the reason why adult friendships are so difficult is because we are dealing with adults and you assume that everyone is doing their inner work and are able to fix themselves first before going out there into the world. So when you are now at a position where in your friend group there's, the fringe friend or this, it's like, I don't want to tell, a 36-year-old that you need to prioritize yourself. Like I need you to already be there. This is the difference,
Yeah.
So I think that's also part of why it's so difficult to make friends.
You raise a very valid point. Usually the people that need help the most are the ones that are less likely to seek it.
Yeah.
Like, especially if they're the mean girl, if they're lacking in friendship, but there comes to a point where they do like notice like, wait, this keeps happening. And I'm just trying to bring awareness to patterns. But like, yeah, like you shouldn't have to babysit anyone, especially if you're on the other side.
On the topic of finding new friends, because I think that that's also a challenge that a lot of us go through. I think in the past, specifically even 5 years from the COVID lockdowns to also a lot of people been moving around. That is such a difficult thing to tackle as you get older. Do you have any tips for people that are trying to find those ride or dies in their 30s?
Add in the fact if you also work remote, you have even less opportunities to like find friends of like your commute or at work or whatnot. I would say if you're trying to find friends, first you have to do the inner work of like, how are you showing up as a friend? Are you showing up as a good friend? Do you ask the person about themselves? Do you also initiate and reach out? Do you expect the other person to do the legwork? So being mindful of all of those things. But then I would also say, think of like, what are your favorite hobbies? So like say Pilates, for instance, is like your go-to exercise. Try finding a studio. Don't just like commit to like the same class every day or same time every week. First, like test it out. Be like, oh, this group usually has these group of women. No one really feels like they're in the same like chapter of life. Like say they're younger or older, you're looking for moms. Find out what you're looking for. And that's going to help you. And then once you find that group, then that's when you commit because you want to become more familiar. People are more likely to be your friend or become friends if they're familiar with you. So the more time you see that person, the more likely the other person's going to be like, oh, this girl's familiar. We could maybe be friends.
That's a great tip, actually.
Thanks. So like commit going to the same place at the same time. Once you've identified this group of women, maybe there's something going there.
And take it easy. Eagerness can be intimidating when it comes to friendships.
Yeah, and you don't want to seem desperate too.
I'm in the season in my life when I really like somebody, I'm like, we're going to be really good friends. And then I leave the conversation and I just leave it there. And then they like, okay, if they reciprocate, they're like, okay,
exactly.
We're on.
Yeah. But that's good. You put the ball in their field. Like you've given like a little bone and then you're like, do they take it? Or are they like, kind of like how your other friend was? You don't want someone to be following you around. You're looking for someone who could be an equal.
Yeah.
Not where you're just like the follower and they're just like following you around like a little dog.
Girl, we have too much to do. Have you ever been a fringe friend?
Oh, totally.
You have?
Yeah, of course. I've definitely been the friend of being the listener too much.
Yeah.
I've definitely been like, I think one time it hit me when I was like, whoa, where I thought I was in a group and then they all went to a concert without me. And I was like, I found out on social media and I was like, oh, okay.
I'm not part of this.
I'm not a part of this.
Yeah.
And then when that happened, I was like, okay, well, I needed to start deprioritizing them because what was I to them? So it's also, something important. That's when I also realized that I needed to like teach people how to deal with these situations because usually the person that brings up the problem, they're then seen as creating drama.
Right. And you also doubt yourself because you're like, am I making a big deal out of this? We're all adults, whatever. You have so many excuses, but you're, again, not listening to yourself. You're just pushing it down.
Exactly. So my whole purpose in content, and I created a whole like comeback library with tips and scripts, is really like how can people learn how to have these conversations that are so difficult that we're not often taught that don't cause drama. So we're not making it about the other person. We're talking about like what you need in the friendship. So how can you change?
Let's go back to this mean girl energy because this is one topic that I always get asked about. And I have to tell you, my character, I don't have a lot of capacity.
Mhm.
I never, thank God, never had to be in an environment where I have to stay
Sure.
and figure out that energy, because I'm kind of like, I don't like it, I leave, you never see me again. So it all worked out. But I wonder, like, why does it still exist, this mean girl thing in our 30s and 40s?
Yeah. So it just never magically disappears. Okay. Now they just have like nicer shoes and handbags. But really, the point is they just never grew up. Now it's packaged as passive aggressiveness, but with a smile. It's so subtle, it's so hard to detect. And like these women, they never really learned how to deal with insecurity. They never learned how to deal with jealousy. They don't know how to deal with conflict resolution in a healthy way. They feel less than. So they want to make other people feel down. And really, their intent is to harm someone's sense of belonging, their social standing or reputation, or their confidence, because it really does make them feel better about themselves. And it really is about power and control. So all of this just never goes away. It just looks differently. And when I mean differently, I mean like it looks like passive concern, like, oh, did you hear? I feel so bad for so and so. And then they're like spreading a rumor about someone. Or it like, so it's so subtle because it looks like niceness, but it's like performative. Because
Yeah.
would they be saying this if that person were standing right there?
Right there.
It looks like forgetting to include someone, and then it looks like backhanded compliments, like, "Oh, you actually look nice today." So it's like the words of like,
Oh my God.
"Actually" or "finally" or the tone. It's like the emphasis on certain words that
Yeah.
then you're like, "Wait, was that nice? It sounded nice, but it's just really hard to call out." So then the person gets away with it.
You know what comes up for me is I'm curious about the cultural aspect in friendships.
Sure.
I think that in North America, there's a lot of passive aggressiveness because a lot of people, they're not clear, they don't get to the point, they
Yeah.
don't say it the way it is because it deemed as like impolite
Yeah.
or mean.
Uh-huh.
But there's actually so much more happening with this passive aggressiveness rather than being able to just directly communicate whatever you think about. I find that with certain friends that I have, if they're from my culture, like the Eastern European, it sometimes hurts, but it's the
Sure.
truth.
Yeah.
I don't have to go away from that conversation wondering what it meant because they tell me what it means, you know? Have you grew up here? Did you grow
I
up
grew
here?
up in Miami, yeah, but
Okay.
my parents are Cuban Spanish.
So how does that work for you? Have you ever kind of found difference within your maybe culture, like community and just out there in the world once you started working in this industry?
Sure. I mean, a lot of women grow up that gossip is bonding. It's like the easiest way to be vulnerable because you're not sharing anything about yourself and being vulnerable about yourself. You're sharing someone else's,
Right.
story. So it's like that helps them form this bond, form this connection. So that's like, I mean, if you think about it from like the dawn of time, women gossip. That's just,
But I don't think it will ever go away.
No,
'Cause
I don't think it
do
will ever
think
go
that
away.
is definitely, a glue that's been working for years or decades. Forever.
Exactly. And it's really more so about the passive aggressiveness that you said. It's socially acceptable. It's not okay to be this outspoken, direct person. I mean, girls and women are raised to be like agreeable, likable, and to go with the flow. And that kind of makes it also easier to be the French friend. Also makes it easier for you to fall into these traps because it's just like women grew up with that.
Yeah.
So it's just socially acceptable. So especially culturally like in North America.
When you have a friend that you've known and you've built this connection for years, and all of a sudden they kind of switch on you, how do you handle that?
Well, I guess it depends what happened. So like if they're like say a mean girl
Yeah.
and now they're targeting you, or is it because you started noticing that they're doing it to other people?
No, towards you.
Towards you. So a mean girl, especially in a group, totally normal. They're going to switch up the target every so often because that's how they stay in power and in control. It keeps the group unstable. So
My goodness.
it's not like
Game of
necessarily they're
Thrones.
doing it on purpose,
Yeah.
but they lack the awareness that this is what they're doing. But that's what happens. It's not like they're a sociopath, okay? But it's a matter of like, because of the issues that I mentioned earlier, the insecurity, they feel less than, they don't know how to process jealousy or the fact that they don't know how to process healthy conflict, they do this. So they'll turn on someone. And it usually happens every few months or every few years that there'll be a new target. And once they turn on you, you have to answer yourself, are they open to honest conversations
Mm-hmm.
where you can tell them how you're feeling about what's going on, but you need to have something specific, because if you go at it vague,
Right. I
they're
just
going to
feel
gaslight you.
like you've been,
Yeah.
that is a no.
No.
That's like right away they get defensive.
Exactly. So you need to be specific, and you need to have these short, neutral responses about how to handle this person, because now they're targeting you. Then you also need to ask yourself, okay, how am I feeling after spending time with this person? Am I feeling drained? Am I feeling dismissed? Am I feeling like not so great because life's too short and you're too busy to be spending time with people that aren't filling your cup?
How do you navigate that though without losing your cool? Especially if someone, again, we're talking about a scenario where this is a friend.
Yeah.
So when you come and you want to share and you want to understand what's going on because you obviously care about this friendship and they become defensive, how do you continue trying to solve this without losing yourself to the emotional turmoil?
I would say never match, never mirror their energy, because that's only going to continue what's going on and it's never going to get to a solution. So I would say, like, go up to them if they're capable of having this conversation, because I always think everyone's entitled to at least one.
Yeah.
And it could look something like, hey, I'm being more mindful in how I'm showing up in my friendships. I would love to see how we're both showing up, because it's not just about you. It's about making it about the other person. If you just said about you, then they're going to use it as an opportunity to go after all the things that they see that you do wrong, but then they're going to hold zero accountability. So it's important to say, like, hey, I'm trying to be more mindful about how we're both showing up in our friendship. Have I ever dropped the ball on something? See, like, what's going on. And if they like deflect or say, no, everything's fine, well, that's information. If they then continue with like the passive aggressiveness, the backhanded compliments, the excluding you, because they're not capable of having a mature conversation. Now, if they then tell you like, okay, XYZ has been bothering me after they're done, remember, you have to meet and listen to what they're saying. You could then say, how about you? Do you think anything's going on with you or in our relationship, so that you're turning it also on them, so that they're also looking inward.
What point do you know, and you have to be honest with yourself, when the friendships that you're in, it's just going through a rough patch, or is it kind of time to let it go?
I think it goes back to what I was saying about growth flags. Is this a repairable challenge? Is this a misunderstanding? Is this a mismatched season because we're just in different chapters of our life? Someone just had a baby, someone's going through a divorce or something like that. So it could be hard.
Yeah.
But that means it's repairable. You can have these conversations, especially if at some point in the relationship was healthy. Like, it was mutual, it was reciprocal. You did feel emotionally safe that you could have conversations with this friend and they weren't going to like shut down or be defensive. Whereas it's a red flag, it may be time to not necessarily cut them off, because I actually don't believe in cutting off anyone unless they're like actually abusing you from that perspective.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Instead, I think of quiet distancing, because what happens when you see them in the grocery store? It's going to be super awkward. So like, instead, just like, they're no longer your friend. You just tell yourself mentally, I'm quiet distancing, I'm deprioritizing them to an acquaintance. And you just, as I said earlier about like emotional connection fades in friendships when you're older if you don't see them. Same's going to happen here. So you just stop taking their calls as so often. It takes longer for you to reply, and just don't hang out with them.
But you see, this is interesting because when I listen to this sounds to me a little bit like ghosting, which I'm not a fan of.
Sure.
Sometimes, again, I prefer just tell me like, hey, you know what? I really feel like it's not beneficial for either of us. Love you, respect you, wish you the best. Have a great life.
So a lot of people can have these mature conversations of like, hey, this isn't working. And, but then there's this other viewpoint. And the difference between ghosting and quiet distancing is ghosting is like literally like you don't reply ever. This is you do reply. You do call them back. You're just not going to be as emotionally available from them. And you're just not going to hang out with them like all the time. You're going to hang out with them in groups. You're not going to just like do one-on-one with them. So like it's just doesn't make for that awkward scenario. And of course, this is also after you've had this conversation with them. Try having the repair conversation. And if they continue resorting to the other ways, then it's like, okay, this isn't worth my energy. I
Yeah.
just don't, they can't have a mature conversation. I don't feel emotionally safe with them. I just don't need to make it a thing though.
Would you suggest the same thing when it's a friendship where nothing happens, everything is great, but there's definitely this feeling of I outgrew this relationship? Would you recommend that conscious, how do you, I keep thinking about conscious uncoupling, but this is just a different name to a different scenario.
Quiet distancing.
Quiet distancing. Would you do the same kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you don't need to like hurt someone's feelings about like saying like.
Because that's the thing,
Yeah.
right? You don't have any animosity or
Yeah.
anger. You're just like, this kind of ran its course and you want to keep the peace.
Yeah, you have to ask yourself, what's the purpose or what's the goal in having this conversation? At least with the repair one, with the friend that was doing things that you didn't like how they were showing up in the friendship, you can see if you can have this honest conversation so they change.
Yeah.
But if you just outgrew them because you're just like at different stages or chapters in your life and they're incapable of meeting you there, doesn't mean that they did something wrong per se, but it doesn't mean you need to hurt their feelings. You just don't need to be as emotionally available for them.
I feel like even when you're the one who's distancing, there's definitely this feeling of you're losing something, right? Because we get attached to a person, we have the memories, we have the experience with them. I wonder actually if you've ever had this experience where it was this really peaceful distancing,
Yeah.
but you also kind of mourn it and it's sad for you. And in a way that sometimes can make you ask yourself, am I doing the right thing? Am I being dramatic? Like, is this,
Yeah.
how do you go about that?
Well, I mean, what you're talking about is like a lot of nostalgia. And like you had this long relationship where things were great, but at some point something changed and it was no longer feeling that same void for you. So at that point, it made sense. And you have to remind yourself, like, I had a great time with this friend and she was like, I don't know, my best friend in my 20s. And that's okay. She's my best friend in my 20s. And just being okay with that.
Do you believe that there's such a thing like one best friend?
I think we, as a culture, definitely tend to over romanticize having this like one ride or die best friend.
Yeah.
And that leads to like such high expectations. Like this one magical person needs to meet all of these needs that we have. But I think it's really, really undervalued that we could have, say, 3 to 5 best friends that all meet something totally different that you need, like one mom friend, you know, one workout friend. And like you guys always do these things together, but it doesn't have to be like one person that's everything. Some people have them and that's amazing, but it's just not realistic for everyone for that.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest realization for me. I've always had such high standards for the relationships in my life. And I had to learn my way through navigating these relationships and being okay with this is not a depth relationship. Like it brings me something else. This is we go out and have fun. This is, you know, we share our love about hobbies or books or whatever. But for me it was, for a long time, it like had to be all encompassing. I don't know where that came from. I guess the same way how we look at relationships and our partners.
Yeah, it's just like how you matured and you grew older.
Maybe we're just trying to find a shortcut, you know, being like, here, one person, done, let's go. Next.
I mean, it's great. Well, we're also conditioned from like childhood. Best friend. That implies one. It doesn't imply many. So like we can blame whoever coined the term best friend, you know, we can blame it on them. But like we're older, we're in our 30s, people are getting older and it's a matter of like, we're craving this depth. And like best little tip for you, if you tend to crave depth, whoever meets that need in you, they're a great person to hang out with one-on-one. For anyone that meets these like surface level friendships, hang out with them in groups because it's going to make you feel uncomfortable when it's just one-on-one, because it's going to be hard for you to have these depth life conversations because they're not capable of them.
This is a great piece of information. Do you have any more of those like tips? I feel like that helps people to really look at the relationship that they have in their lives in a way that's like, okay, I can put it in buckets, you know? Any other friendship hacks?
Yeah, well, I would say we can have 3 to 5 best friends.
Okay.
So we can have a best friend for different needs. Surface level friendships, hang out in the group, if they're capable of having a depth friendship, they're perfect to hang out one-on-one. Be aware if you're carrying a friendship. Are you the one that is always reaching out? I dare you. I like to offer this exercise for my clients that have fallen into like being the fringe friend, is to do like a little reset, friendship reset. Don't do this with everyone because you need to have buffers because it can trigger a lot of guilt and shame and sadness. So like I don't want that to happen. But try one at a time to see if this friendship is actually mutual. Stop reaching out to them. See if they actually reach out to you in like 2-3 weeks. Will they actually ever reach out? Or are you the one that's always initiating, always making the plans? Because that's how you'll know from the get-go if it's mutual or not, if you've been doing too much work.
Definitely don't do it all at once.
No. Don't do this to like all your friends because you're going to feel lonely. Do it once at a time.
Okay, so we've gone through all the things that can feel wrong in a friendship. What does a healthy friendship looks and feels like?
Okay, so
you touched on a few of these things, yeah.
So one, it's emotionally safe. Okay. So that means that you can provide feedback to them without judgment, or they provide feedback to you and it's not judgmental. There's no backhanded compliments. It means they're not keeping score. It means it's mutual, it's reciprocal, it's supportive. They're like, you guys are cheerleaders for each other. You guys both want each other to succeed, and it doesn't matter who gets there first, is like probably like my biggest thing. There's no competition.
Do you think that's possible among women?
I think it is 100% possible. It's just hard to find. Why? Because we tend to do too much work, and it's good to have different types of friendships.
Have you ever asked your husband on his views with female friendships?
You know, it's funny, when I first started talking a lot about friendships and Mean Girls, he thought I was making it up because guys aren't like this.
No, they're so simple.
They're so simple. They're assertive if something's bothering them, and that's the difference.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until White Lotus came out with the 3 trio girlfriends and all of that, and it becoming such a thing to talk about, that it was like, it almost felt validating. He was like, oh, I didn't realize it was a thing. Like, guys just think girls are just coming up with drama.
That's so interesting because when I spoke to Gary about it, he kind of has the same view on it. He's like, you guys just, I don't understand. When women get in a group, it always makes him very nervous because he's like, they're plotting something, there's gossip there. And he told me a few times on, in certain environments where he's like, they don't want good for you. It's like the weirdest energy. And he actually has a hard time. Now he has better understanding of it because I explained, my circle of really close friends. But he always was under this impression where you can never really relax among other women as a woman because there's always something under the surface, which I thought is so interesting, but also sad.
Yeah.
And I wonder where they get that.
Yeah.
I guess from just hearing about all the drama.
Well, I think it's one, like if you're interested in making new friends or starting to filter, pay attention to these red flags. Do they tend to get defensive when you have honest conversations? Do they do these backhanded compliments? Do they exclude you? Are they a mean girl? No. If you're hanging out with mean girls, no. It will be very hard for you to find a real friend in a mean girl because they're competitive. It all stems from scarcity, where they think that there's only space and room for one. There's only space for one successful one. There's only room for one funny one fashionable one. So when, like, say there's like 4 fashionable girlfriends, everyone's almost competing with each other about who can be the most successful, who could be the most fashionable. And you get this like underlying like competition or competitiveness in it.
Do you think in your 20s it's easier for us to create these groups? Because I see some amazing like female friendships online. Do you think it's easier in your 20s because we just don't think about it too much? It just feels more natural. We're not
the same
evaluating every piece of information that comes in.
Yeah. Well, I think social media, right? It's a highlight reel. So like people don't tend to say the full story. Like they could be going through a good period and you just don't see it. But like in our 20s, you have more opportunities, these built-in opportunities. You're always seeing them in college. You're always seeing them in work. Whereas like now you have kids and you're living in a house instead of like say in an apartment with like, where you're constantly going out and having these like weekly hangouts. Now it's just a lot less.
Any green flags that you feel like are underrated?
A green flag that's underrated is probably remembering the small things. So like, I don't know, you say that you had a doctor's appointment or that you're going on a podcast or something like that, and you told that friend that, and then they later followed up with you, like,
Mm,
how did it go? That makes them feel seen and it makes them feel heard.
that's why you can't have more than 4 and 5, because it's a lot of information to keep in mind. Okay, let's do a little fireside questions.
Okay.
Fireside?
Lightning?
Lightning? I need to figure that one out. Okay, so the first one friendship red flag we ignore too often. I feel like we touched on it,
Yeah.
but if I had to, from listening to you, what comes up to me is really that backhanded compliments, because it's so subtle. So I feel like that's a big red flag and you have to really pay attention.
Yep.
What was for you if you had to choose one?
When you're carrying the full friendship, because you're missing a lot of the red flags, and you're also necessarily not letting the other friend use their muscle friendship. You're doing all the work for them that then they end up accidentally under functioning, and then you get resentful, and then this
Right.
stirs up all of this.
That's a good one. Text you to send when you want to reconnect without being awkward.
I would say, hey, miss you. You want to do like lunch this or next week?
One habit that makes you a better friend.
Following up on the small things.
Oh,
Definitely.
I love that. What's a friendship myth that we have to ditch?
That we can only have one ride or die best friend.
Amen. Worst friendship advice you've ever heard?
If they wanted to, they would. And you know why I say that? Because I feel like that's such a popular thing. A lot of people are like, oh, if they wanted to reach out, they would. You have to remember, like, some people actually are so caught up in their own life. Someone could be struggling financially. Somebody could be struggling, like they just had a baby and they have postpartum and they're overwhelmed, or they're just so busy, or they just really lack the awareness. Always give that friend that opportunity to show you that they're a friend by having that conversation, instead of just like, oh, my friend never reaches out to me, and you play the victim and then you just cut them off for no reason.
That's a really good one, because I do think that narrative is very strong these days.
Yeah.
If he wanted or she wanted, she would. Christie, I'm so curious. You have so much amazing knowledge, and again, also this firsthand experience that I really appreciate. Any books that you would recommend people to read, just even about the psychology of like communication, friendship, building a relationship? Because I don't know about you, but I feel like we need that more than ever these days.
So I am totally guilty that I don't read anymore. I don't have time.
What's your source of information?
I don't have time. So like I just research journals.
Yeah.
And like, you know, that's very like academic and boring. So like I tend
On ChatGPT.
No, not ChatGPT, like on actual like academic journals. And so like that's where I get like my research from. But guiltily, like if that's even a word, I would plug in my own Assertive You, because that's where I talk a lot about like friendships and mean girls, and I provide tips and scripts. If you don't have access to pay for coaching or therapy online, this is what I offer instead.
Give us all the handles where people can find
You
you.
can find me on Instagram at Christie_Ferrari. And then on my website, ChristieFerrari.com, I have a membership-based platform called Assertive You, where you can learn how to be the assertive you in your life, and you can learn how to deal and navigate with mean girls, family drama, how to make friends as an adult, and parenting.
I love that. Christie, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for
I've
having
honestly
me.
learned a lot. I'm going to go through a few people that I need to send some
A
messages
little message
to.
too. Well, I'm glad.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't miss my newest episode right here. And if you're listening to the podcast on Apple or Spotify, please go and leave a review with your biggest takeaway. I love reading your thoughts. They inspire me. So if you have any suggestions for guests or topics, you can leave them in the comment section. And always, always remember, you are not alone.